So I'll introduce Brenda. Brenda is a manager at ICF International with over 7 years of experience in transportation planning, policy development, and environmental analysis covering air quality and climate change issues in particular. She currently focuses on climate change adaptation planning for transportation agencies, including identifying climate-sensitive decisions, conducting benefit cost analysis to develop a financial analysis for adaptation, and developing innovative methods for integrating climate change into planning, asset management, engineering, design, and operations. Prior to joining ICF, Brenda worked as a transportation planner at the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC, the MPO for the San Francisco Bay Area. She has been able to continue her work with them at ICF, where she manages their smart driving educational campaign and in-vehicle device promotion program, as well as the evaluation of several of their sustainability programs. Brenda has a master's and bachelor's degree in civil and environmental engineering from the University of California at Berkeley. And I'll introduce the other two guys after Brenda's completed, but Brenda?
All right, thank you very much, Frank and Penny, for the introductions. Okay, that's forward.
Yeah.
Great. So, as Frank mentioned, I now work for ICF International, but I've been fortunate to be able to continue my work with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'll be talking today about some of their eco and emissions reductions related programs. So a little bit of background on MTC. They are the MPO for the San Francisco Bay Area, which you can see up on this map. It's a very wide-ranging area. It covers all 9 counties of the Bay, so ranging from San Francisco itself, Silicon Valley, Oakland, to wine country, all the way down to Gilroy, the garlic capital of the United States. So they are the basically planning, funding, coordination, operations, and advocacy organization for the Bay. So the main program I want to talk to you about is their Climate Initiatives Program, which has several elements. But in terms of timing, this program was started in 2009 when MTC dedicated $80 million to this program. Part of that, $32 million, went towards a grant program, which the call for projects was issued in 2010. They were really kicked off in 2011. And ICF managed the evaluation program for all of those projects to have a non-biased third-party evaluation to look at emissions reduction benefits as well as cost savings, health benefits, mobility and access, et cetera. So most of the projects were wrapped up in 2014 and 2015. So these are the sets of projects that $80 million went to, the first being the Smart Driving Program, which is what I'll focus my talk on. But then if we have time and Frank doesn't yank me off the stage, then I'll go into the grant program, which are those innovative climate program categories, the Safe Routes to School program, and the Experience Electric campaign. So what is smart driving, also known as eco-driving? I think we've heard a lot about this today, so I won't read all of these bullets, but I will re-emphasize that it includes both the in-vehicle driver experience as well as things you do before or after driving, such as vehicle maintenance. So first, Penny also asked me to talk a little bit about other programs in the US that are focused at behavior change from the public agency perspective, other than the ones that the rest of the panel will be speaking about. So before we started this project for MTC, we obviously did a literature review. We found very similar reports and studies to what Angela talked about earlier from UC Davis. The full range of experiences being from 0 to 18% improvements in fuel economy. But when we looked a little deeper, the most rigorous studies, and by that I mean those that had a large number of participants, were multi-day or longer in duration, and were actual in-vehicle tests rather than in a simulated environment. On average there, we saw fuel improvements of more the range of 2 to 4%. So for those other US programs that we looked at before launching our program, the Drive Clean Texas program really stood out to us. This is a CMAQ-funded program in Texas, so they're trying to improve air quality and reduce emissions that are human health pollutants. Their program is really interesting if you are at a public agency because they put all of their materials online. You can have direct access to their radio announcements or their print ads or their television advertisements and all of their other public service announcement type mediums, which is a very extensive collection. They also have a very interesting program for children. And I like the analogy to recycling here. Recycling didn't really take off in the US until they started teaching it to kids. And it was really when those kids went home and started nagging their parents, the recycling took off. So they're trying to use that same approach with smart driving, of having the children be that backseat driver that can kind of urge mom or dad to drive a little smarter or take their vehicle in for a tune-up. So one thing that Drive Clean Texas has more recently launched was a partnership that's called RoadSense, which is a really nice online calculator that easily allows you to see how much money you could save by smart driving over the course of a year based on the type of vehicle you drive, standard cost of gas, what strategies you're most interested or able to implement in your own life. And then also, if you choose to, you can track your MPG over time through that application. The other program is the Drive Green, Save Green, which was an I-95 initiative that really just provided more information to the public about smart driving tips and had links to some other calculators and information. But very interesting and graphically unique, but not quite as robust as the Drive Clean Texas campaign. So since those were the only programs we found when we started this several years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there about the effectiveness of public marketing campaigns or educational campaigns around smart driving. So because of that, MTC launched a pilot program, half of which was managed by ICF International, half of which was run out of UC Davis. So the portion out of UC Davis is the display you see on the right, which was a phone app. And they tested essentially several different driver displays. The one you see here is obviously showing you your real-time miles per gallon. There were others that showed you your fuel savings or your CO2 savings or your actual monetized savings. And the idea was, what do people respond to the best? What actually causes them to drive differently? And this was actually the winning screen and the one that improved emissions the most. So that one actually had a fairly good result. The other program tested this small device you see here that's much more simple. It does not plug into your OBD port. It just is measuring your real-time fuel efficiency and has that kind of colored bar that ranges from green to red to give you that very visual indicator of how you're doing. And unfortunately, that pilot didn't end up with very statistically significant results. But between the two programs combined and the feedback of survey of participants, there was enough justification for MTC to move forward with a more robust public driving campaign, smart driving public campaign. So this program, Drive Smart Bay Area, was just launched mid-February, so I certainly don't have results to share, but I think it is a very interesting and creative program, so I'm going to tell you about how it works. There are two primary components, one being focused on public education on what those smart driving techniques and strategies are. The idea that anyone can do this in their vehicle. They don't need a device in order to make it work. And so that has a series of tips on their website related to that. It also has a video that hopefully, if it works, I'll show you the trailer version of. The other half of the program is a discount on the automatic device, which is very similar to the dash device that you heard about earlier. So it provides you with auditory cues as you're driving. If you accelerate too hard, decelerate too hard, or you are speeding. So it helps to avoid some of those distracted driver issues that were just talked about, because you don't necessarily have to be looking at a screen to get that real-time feedback that what you're doing is not efficient. It also has lots of other interesting strategy or techniques to it. So when you're done driving, you can go and look up a result of all of your trips you've ever taken. Your MPG changes over time, where on a map you tend to brake too hard or speed, so you can kind of point out those hot spots and learn from them. They also send you a drive score every week or so that you can, and that's what you're seeing in the middle of the screen there. It compares you to other drivers. What's funny is when Automatic did a survey of their drivers, before they started getting these scores, 80% of people think they are above average in terms of their driving capabilities, which obviously cannot be possible. So it can be a bit of a reality check for people that maybe I'm not saving as much money as I can be, maybe I'm not driving as efficiently as I could be. So the ways that we're promoting these, so basically MTC is buying that device down by 50%, so it's now offered at $50 to the public, both through their website as well as in Best Buy stores in the Bay Area. And they're really promoting those fuel savings and emission savings, as well as the fact that it will help you decode your check engine light, because maintenance is such a large part of smart driving as well. So let's see if this works.
What is smart driving, you ask? Smart driving is a set of strategies to improve your gas mileage. This means you won't have to go to the gas station to fill up as often, leaving you with more money for fun. Go to 511.org/DriveSmartBayArea for more information.
So that's kind of the trailer, more educational version of the campaign. One of the things that I'm excited about is that we are having a larger push now coming out at the beginning of summer. So while we're already doing Pandora ads to advertise this program, we're doing live radio reads, double-click ads on Google, and a couple other mediums, as well as in-store events at Best Buy. We're going to do a larger push that includes a driving course, essentially. So you can get that feedback in real time. You get a scorecard or a grade at the end that kind of encourages you, oh no, I got a D, maybe I should get this device, maybe it would be helpful. As well as we're looking into potential celebrity endorsements of the program, product reviews by local media outlets, and several other interesting strategies. So it's going to have a pretty big push behind it that we're excited to see what amount of devices we can actually move with that. Okay, I'm getting the 2-minute signal, which is fine because I've wrapped up on the smart driving component of my presentation. Now I'm going to fly through a couple slides just to give you a taste of what other interesting programs MTC has been working on through that grant program that I mentioned earlier. There were a series of TDM, Transportation Demand Management grants, one of which, Connect Redwood City, really asked the question, if we actually packaged all these TDM strategies together, sometimes we'll test car sharing in one location or van pools in another. What if we put them all in one city? How effective would that be? And it actually had some fairly good GHG emission results. Some others were parking pricing related, trying out new innovative parking pricing strategies, as well as marrying that with free transit passes for local businesses and better enforcement of the parking. So that was an interesting program that didn't necessarily have the best GHG benefits, but the public perception of ease of parking did significantly increase, which was a very interesting result. Bicycle projects, a bike mobile that fixed kids' bikes at schools and hopefully will encourage them to bike more as they grow. The Bay Area Bike Share program was launched through this project. It's now expanded through several other funding sources. Some electric vehicle deployments, both in local government fleets, as well as with the tribal community, as well as electric vehicle car sharing. The cold-in-place recycling gets a gold star. It actually saved the local government money while reducing emissions. And this is the idea that you don't necessarily have to haul in new asphalt and other materials in order to repave your roadway. You can grind up what's there right in place and lay it back down to have a smooth new driving surface. And that significantly reduces embedded material greenhouse gas emissions. Safe routes to school, really encouraging children to walk and bike to school. There are national programs for this, but they really tried to push beyond some of the traditional strategies. And lastly, the Experience Electric campaign is a series of ride and drive events for electric vehicles. Most people have never driven one. They don't know what is appealing about them. It's really once you get them in a car that they say, wow, that was fun. It has great pickup, it has great speed. It's like driving a spaceship, which people seem to be into that. So really trying to get people to try it out in an environment where it is not the dealerships there pushing the cars. It's just independent people hired by MTC, so it's not that pushy sales environment that also tends to drive a lot of people away. And then amplifying that message about those people's experiences through social media and other networks. So that's it. Thank you.
We can entertain a couple quick questions if anybody's got any for Brenda.
No? We'll also do a couple at the end. Oh, go ahead.
Of all those great programs you just showed us, which had the best cost-benefit analysis? Which was the cheapest to implement and gave you the best savings?
Yeah, some of the car sharing programs ended up being very effective, and that's in part because car sharing companies are pitching in as well. It's not necessarily just the public investment. So that partnership is really beneficial. And then the reason why the smart driving program has moved forward is because of the cost effectiveness of the emissions reductions from that.
Right here.
Smart driving programs, you asked to collect any electric vehicle-specific information?
No, automatic can't collect that information on electric vehicles. I think there must be a reason why none of these companies are really getting that information. So.
And one last one.
Robert DiDomenico, Cargo Fish Physical Internet Utility. Are you in touch with anybody from the International Urban Freight Conference? Genevieve Giuliano for Last Mile Urban Freight. Have you looked at any of that in your program?
We have not. So the reason why MTC is running all of these programs, I guess I should be using this. So the reason why MTC is really investing in these programs is because of a law in California called SB 375 that was mentioned earlier that requires MPOs to reduce emissions from transportation and land use, but specifically from light-duty vehicles. And so MTC wants to invest in these programs to help meet those targets, and freight, unfortunately, can't count towards.
Is transportation demand management, that would count toward it, though?
If it's reducing emissions from light-duty vehicles, yes.
Oh, so if anything would eliminate trips, then it eliminates vehicle miles traveled, then it eliminates light-duty vehicle emissions. I'll have to get with you later.
Okay.
Okay. We're gonna move on to our next speaker, and we'll have a little time afterwards for a couple last questions. We have one that's.
No, I really want to thank you. I noticed in your film that the reward program for driving smarter was to go to the golf course. So how does your model allow for the fact that people are adding more miles in? Because I don't assume the golf course was something you walked to. And by the way, I want to correlate this with the recent reports that are coming out about California energy efficiency and the feedback loop creation. Same problem, which is the more energy efficient you become, the cheaper it becomes, the more money you save, the more additional things you do that require energy or require miles.
Right. So in the full video, basically what's being shown in that particular element of the clip is that you should reduce weight in your vehicle and take those golf clubs out of your car so you're not driving them around the whole time. And that's the point that it's trying to emphasize is this is an example of something heavy that people might have in their cars that they could remove. There's also
no,
an
actually,
anvil.
it was saying you'd save money and you have more time to do other things like go to the golf course, which is more driving.
I understand your point, so.
Okay. Our next speaker is Alexander Keating. He's the director of the Special Projects Unit at New York City Department of Transportation, where he oversees a variety of technology demonstration projects, policy research, and planning initiatives. Prior to joining New York City DOT, he worked as project manager for global initiatives at the Penn Institute for Urban Research, where his work focused on city-to-city knowledge transfer and sustainable urban development. He received his master's in city planning from MIT's Department of Urban Studies and Planning in 2010, and his master's in politics from the University of Edinburgh. Alex?
This one to go forward, back, and lasers that one. Okay. All right. Well, I want to start just by thanking the organizers for inviting us, me here to speak. This is something that I've presented at other NYIT and UTRC events in the past, so some of it might seem familiar. This is Drive Smart. It's one of our projects at Special Projects at DOT that's looking at how we can change behavior on the roads, improve safety, help folks save money, save time. So I'm going to jump right into really what the program is and what it isn't. Unlike a lot of the programs we've looked at, we're not trying to produce an app or a service or some kind of feedback that we generate. We're really looking to create a platform that powers private sector innovations and apps that are already out there working. You've heard from Metropia already, you've heard from Dash. There's been a lot of sort of overlap with the programs that we're working with. Insurance product from Allstate. I'll get into that a little bit further. But we really want to be able to harness data that's already out there and find new insights about how we can manage the system and really help the drivers access the services that are out there already and create a feedback loop for everyone where the information is not just shared, not just open data, but almost co-created data, one program that allows that to happen. DriveSmart, as you've seen other places already, has its own OBD2 device. It is contingent on that device to participate, so we send those out. There we go. Just the nuts and bolts. This is a federally funded VPPP grant. The in-market time is 1 year, so we're sort of right in the middle of it right now in terms of our launch. It's up to 400 drivers, so it's a small sample size. You'll see that the amount of driving that 400 individuals or even less in New York do is quite impressive when you make sure you're selecting participants, private fleet drivers who drive at least 4 times a week. I want to just focus on the time frame and that this is a pilot program. This is a demonstration project. It's not standard fare for New York City Department of Transportation to create a platform for private sector products. So we're learning as we go, and we will be evaluating how to amplify the impact and really learn from the program this coming summer. The goals writ large here, there's sort of the goal for the driver, which is about saving money, saving time, as you see there, and driving greener, because we do incorporate a driver feedback app as well as routing apps. On DOT's side, it dovetails nicely with the larger framework of Vision Zero and improving safety, because we're getting lots of information on not just how people are driving, but things we don't usually see, like near misses, where people are jamming on their brakes or accelerating, or hard turning events. Data we're not usually collecting from private drive, from just regular New York City drivers. It's also a great complement for the data sets we bring in through the existing yellow taxi GPS that comes in, green cab now. So it's sort of just fleshing out the full system and MTA bus time, how we can evaluate the entire network and understand what's going on the streets. The system itself, very quickly, it again relies on the OBD2 device to make things work here, but in the case of Dash, they presented earlier, it's speaking directly to the driver. For a couple of our service providers, we're taking the data in, we're parsing it in our own server, the DriveSmart server, which is a virtual server, and sending it to them. So part of this was just building a system that could provide each partner with the information they need. So I get some aspects of the drive while Allstate gets another, and so on and so forth. And we'll go, I think that the partners have been fairly well covered. I think the only other thing to add there is the Allstate one, Allstate's product, you're probably familiar with Progressive Snapshot or Allstate DriveWise, these usage-based insurance products. They made a specific one that is powered by our device rather than theirs, and incentivizes driving at different times of the day, driving less, driving more safely. So, and then the final partner there is Commute Greener, which was a spinoff from Volvo, which was looking at how you just reduce drive-alone trips and altogether, and it's more standard TDM fare where they're trying to get them out of their car onto a train. So the data we take in is through DOT, not what I send to my partners, but through DOT is in 2 buckets. One that's fully anonymized and gives me an actual GPS driving track. So you can see where each individual is driving. We get second-by-second breadcrumb GPS data, so we see the entire drive. We try to scrub the beginning and end, so we're not seeing what spot it's pulling out of and what spot it's pulling into to protect privacy a little bit, but it is anonymized. I don't know who it is. We have one bin of data that is linked to the user's ID when they sign up, and it just gives me aggregate kind of broad brush data on how they're driving, their total VMT, the speeds, the average speeds they're going, things like that. And we were very interested to see, based on all of the services, the Metropias, the Dash, Allstate, and so on, how those affect people's long-term trajectories over the course of a year, or even just the idea that they put one of these in their car and they understand even superficially a little bit that this data is out there. we actually had a fairly reasonable amount of folks on this program who really just wanted to contribute data. They weren't even so concerned with the services, which was a kind of an interesting learning point for us. So I'm going to finish up with some maps of what we're seeing. I hope you can see that. We're at the phase now where we're beginning to really look at how this driving data can help us understand the network and improve safety, understand OD flows, origin destination flows, and the lot. I think it's interesting to see just in a month this is only, I think, about 200 of the devices, you're getting a pretty decent coverage. There's no base map there, just the roads are just where my drivers are driving. And you can see that an awful lot of the driving is taking place in Manhattan, which always kind of surprises me, because that was not a requirement for the program. You just have to live and/or work in one of the boroughs in the city. So looking at there, we can zoom into Manhattan, and you're going to start to see something. This is where we are right now, and you start to see, I apologize for the quality of this graphic, but you start to see some typical parking behavior where people are circling, looking for parking. You'll start seeing where our data gets strange, where you have coverage over the FDR in certain places, and this is really just under the hood of how all of these devices report GPS data, and it's kind of interesting as a public agency for us to better understand that. This one I particularly like. I'm sure you've all gotten out of a subway and brought up your cell phone and Google Maps and seen that it doesn't quite know where you are. The urban canyon effect, it's called sometimes. This is not an actual problem for us. I just kind of find it interesting to look at. These are each second, the ping from each second of a drive, and sometimes they do wander. When we actually analyze the data, we're able to link it to the segment, the road, and properly align everything, the closest segment. But it's one of those kind of just a challenge you go through when you're using this data and trying to make it workable. Another aspect of what we are looking at are hard braking events. We've heard a lot about them today. We're using a standard definition that comes from the insurance world, which is a change of 8 miles an hour in a second. So if you're decelerating by 8 miles in just 1 second, that's considered a hard braking event. If you're doing 10 miles in 1 second, that's an extreme braking event. And this map actually shows feedback we're getting that goes up to 20 miles in a second. It's a challenge to really work with the data and make sure you're not seeing some errors, some glitches in the way the data is reported. We do see data sometimes where it looks like there's a 60 mile an hour deceleration, which means the individual is probably not with us anymore, but then we see them driving some more, and it's really just where the GPS stops reporting a speed, the device stops reporting a speed for 1 second and then comes back in and it's back at the speed it was. So we're finding ways to massage all that and get it to be accurate and work with it. Part of this also, which is not here, is really drilling down into where we're seeing multiple hard braking events and repeated by multiple different drivers in the system. That helps us think about where geometry, signage, speed limit might not be right. And as part of the Vision Zero framework, it's a really useful concept that we could go try to address those, strategically go address those intersections or segments. One of the final maps I'll show you if this moves, let's see, yes, is speeds, just a sense that, basically what we know. It's slower in Manhattan, it's faster on the expressways and outside of the city. But we look at this not just for the aggregate. This is an aggregate look at speeds and a pretty broad brush look at that, but we also look at it by the individual driver. So this is one trip with average speeds along the way, as well as 2 hard braking events during the drive when they were heading, I guess, back out to Melville where they live, most likely. So there's just an introduction to some of the analysis we're doing. We're doing a lot more to drill down to certain areas of the city and understand conditions, and also understand the implications of pricing in these feedback apps on behavior. So the next steps here, we really are evaluating how we can amplify this project without necessarily having to provide one of these to all 8 million New Yorkers, which is, I think, frankly, cost prohibitive. But we think that there are ways of amplifying this and also supplementing cell phone data sometimes for what you can do with a cell phone that's also done by an OBD2 device. looking at TDM, which was mentioned by Brenda before, my unit also has TDM programming in our unit, so we're looking at how we can pair that when we're talking about recommending folks use other modes than drive alone. We could also be pitching to folks who really feel like they have no choice, but at least they could be getting some feedback from established apps and services to help them with eco-driving and to drive more safely. And finally, DOT in general is undertaking some work on connected vehicle technology right now. This is a different animal, but just our experience that we're gathering in telematics and how you understand the flows of vehicles on the streets and how car to driver, car to individual communication works, we're feeding that into the programming that DOT is undertaking now. So that's it. I welcome any questions.
Any questions?
Just wondering what the cost for the devices and whether you see the OEMs putting these in.
So the cost of each of these devices, I think that the Dash, that Jamin, who talked about Dash earlier, mentioned that these things really vary wildly. We went for the Cadillac, let's say, of these kinds of things. So ours was a little heavier in price point because we wanted it to be able to work for Dash, where it uses Bluetooth to speak directly to the phone. We needed it to have cell chip because it's speaking via Verizon network directly to my server. It has accelerometers. It does basically all of the things that these can do. So this one comes in at, I think, we got a better price because we bought in bulk and we're the government, but I think we came in at like $111 to $116, somewhere in that one per device. So we send them out. We expect to get them back from the drivers at the end of the pilot, but it's not mission critical. And especially if people are enjoying using things like the Dash app and they want to continue using these, I don't see a huge problem with it.
This might be a question for all the panelists so far. We're talking about data. We're talking about devices that can record data. My question is, how does the drastic drop in gas prices affect your data model in terms of outcome? Is there a way of checking all the matrix with that aspect in mind? And this is a question for anyone who can answer that question. Because when you have a 50% drop in cost of gasoline, how do you figure in mathematically or statistically wise how that affects all your other model projections?
I mean, I can speak very briefly to that in two things. One is, so with our TDM programming at NYC DOT, as well as with this program, before we do a baseline sort of survey of behavior, and we track it over time. So we're able to see if things are changing as we can track the gas prices as well, and we do keep track of that information. With TDM in general, we'll do a control group. So one area of the city that we're not involved with, and see if it's changing the same way. And gas prices are often determining that kind of behavior. On another front, I think it's interesting to remember that part of the Drive Smart, the inception of this program, it's a little off topic, but relates to gas, is that as gas is getting cheaper, gas tax has also remained flat since I think 1993. And these kinds of devices and these kinds of programs have been piloted in other states, like Oregon and other places, to help think about how we're going to transition away from gas tax as a way of funding infrastructure. So we're also interested in understanding how drivers feel about that in New York. It's obviously a state issue, not a city one, but we're definitely, as part of this program, thinking that through, but how we might be able to involve a mileage-based user fee instead of a gas tax in the future.
Yeah, so we haven't done a whole lot to look into what exactly you're asking about. How does the drop in gas prices change people's behavior in their vehicles? But it has been interesting. We believe that our early sales of the device was not as robust as we were initially anticipating it would be, and we think that the messaging of save money on gas wasn't hitting as hard as it could have with gas prices so low. So we are looking to change some of our messaging now to focus a little bit more on that decoding the check engine light, and also to say things like gas is still more expensive in California than it is in other states. So the potential pitch would be everything costs more in the Bay Area, driving shouldn't have to, and something along those lines.
I wasn't more or less interested in the behavior aspects. I was talking about the scientific way that the numbers affect your outcomes in terms of averages, or you have to change all the parameters of your highs and lows and mediums, stuff like that, because of this unforeseen drop in gas prices. That's what I was more interested in.
Question all the way in the back.
This is a question for Alex. Maybe it's too early to know, but have you found some intersections or some locations where there's a lot of car-breaking events, but not necessarily crashes or theories as to why they might be?
Right. It is a little early in terms of individual intersections where we have our eye on some areas, and that is also something that our agency does, period, through the one unit called Research, Implementation, and Safety, RIS, and under the Vision Zero rubric. I mean, we're doing that anyways, so it's a little bit of this is showing us, and it's a little bit this is helping us check places we've kind of had some knowledge about or a suspicion about. And I think right now we have folks that are plugging away trying to produce new insights about areas we hadn't thought of. We're just sort of getting to that, and I'll be reporting back about that soon. And we're also looking at typologies rather than specific. Does this happen more on a high? Are they actually happening more on highways, or is this something that just gets blurry in Manhattan, where there's lots of stop and go driving, and there's lots of where frankly hard braking is not always bad driving. Sometimes it's just avoiding something you need to avoid. So we're working on just kind of decluttering that as we go now.
One last one right here.
Are there any plans for opening up that data for public consumption? Because it's such a great advocacy tool to be able to point to these locations. I know what you're saying, that it still has some vagueness to it, but it would be very useful in terms of, advocating for street design change, advocating for signalization studies, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we try to do a pretty good job of making these kind of data public. We have to be very careful about the anonymity issues, and our system lobotomizes itself every 48 hours from the raw data that comes in. I just get the reports of the types of data I asked for, and I keep those. And I think more likely than just releasing this data, it would be a more complete data set that uses yellow taxi, green taxi, this data, MTA bus, all of the AVL or GPS data that we're taking in as an agency. We'd like to be able to play with more and also make more publicly available to query. I mean, it's definitely a priority for our agency and my unit specifically.
Thank you, Alex.
No problem.
Okay. Our next speaker, I've had the pleasure of knowing for more than 10 years. He told me to use nice words, so I did. John Lyons has served as president and CEO of Metropool since 2001. He provides leadership and management direction while carrying into Metropool's mission, objectives, and strategic plans. As an innovator, collaborator, and recognized expert in the transportation management industry, he piloted many novel approaches and new TDM services. Mr. Lyons has extensive experience across the downstate area of New York, as well as upstate and in Connecticut. He joined Metropool in 1999 with extensive project management experience implementing publicly funded programs in cooperation with the private sector aimed at changing behavior. Before Metropool, he worked for 8 years assisting newly privatized businesses in the emerging market economies of Eastern Europe and Russia. And prior to working overseas, he was a pioneer in promoting energy-conserving building technologies, focusing on solar energy and energy conservation through his business, Sun Space Design. John, it's all yours.
This to go forward, this back, and this to bind.
Okay. Thank you. How do we go full screen for the first one?
It is on full screen.
Oh, good enough. I can assure you that this will be the lowest level of academic rigor that you've heard today. And you'll probably see the lowest level of technology. So you all get a break, and there'll be no data. And Angela's, I thought I had some feedback here, but I have been disabused of that there is no feedback. But we'll talk later. Metropool, Frank introduced me. I won't go into this too much. Been around since 1980, doing transportation demand management. The last 6-7 years, I've been working with Frank, ICF, and John Galgano from CommuterLink on 511 New York Rideshare, which is a statewide TDM initiative. Eco-driving solutions, I'm not going to go to the definition of eco-driving. There's already been a couple, and I'm sure I'll trip. Eco-driving solutions is actually the name of a company, the partner in this. And I think I have to change pilot. I probably shouldn't have come so early. It's going to change everything I'm going to say. I'm not sure this is a pilot, a micro pilot. Maybe let's call it a snapshot. Might be more appropriate. The next couple of slides are from eco-driving solutions, and they're 4 or 5 years old. But it's kind of interesting. They came out of doing safety training near and around the race car industry. So they actually started with safety, and then as gas prices went up, they realized that they could impact that, and then the environmental piece came in. So they saw kind of a business opportunity as much as anything to take their safety training and let it evolve. This slide is very interesting to me. I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty clear. Interesting the way that what they were trying to do, what's behind it, to talk about perception and beliefs, emotional state, responsibility to drive, all these things. I think when I talk about behavior change here today, it's a lot different than, I'm coming at it from a very different angle than most of the people that have gone before me. This is actually talking about the person driving the car. For the most part. This is their approach. This is it. Anticipatory driving and maintenance of your momentum in driving. Kind of interesting, pretty simple. All the statistics and data that's preceded it. They've made this as simple as possible. I'm going to ask Sandeep to do this because I've seen other people trip and fall. I've got a video, and if we can go into it, like 55 seconds, I'll just keep talking. All right. So I'm going to show a video of an actual training. Only 12 people, so pretty small.
Mayor Spano recently launched Yonkers Green City. This is a community-led initiative where
Some people may know
thousands
Brad.
of individuals, businesses, and government officials are making great progress growing a more healthy, vibrant, and attractive community for all those who live and visit and work in Yonkers.
Yeah, and we're honored to be in a partnership with the city, and I can tell you that the leadership shown by the mayor and by Brad in things that you're doing, that everybody is more really than I watching wanted. I didn't want what's any- coming out of Yonkers these days with sustainability and these programs, so it's great to be working together.
Well, eco-driving is simple. It's small changes in driver behavior lead to large savings at the gas pump. And what we're so excited about with eco-driving is that no matter if it's an employee, like somebody working at the Office of Aging who's delivering meals to the elderly, or it's a housing inspector that's going from one job site to another, inspecting buildings, they're driving all the time. Some of them spend hours and hours and hours a day behind the wheel. So if we can teach them techniques that they can apply and achieve up to a 25% reduction in their fuel use, I mean, that's a big win for the city and our fuel bill. But as important, that employee is going to take those techniques home with them, and they're going to save on their personal pocketbook. And that's a really important consideration for us.
I have actually a very similar background to all of the instructors that work on our program. We've all earned our living at one point or another as professional race drivers and professional instructors, which means that we probably look at driving a little bit differently than the average person that drives a car. The driver that's going to get the best fuel mileage and can still operate the car in the shortest amount of time is the one that's going to avoid the most pit stops and is probably going to win.
Everything that you do at some point can add up. Does turning off the air conditioner make a big difference? No, it doesn't. But it does add that little bit. Does being easy with the throttle pedal off a start make a big difference? Yeah, somewhat. But if you add that also to the air conditioning, it makes a bigger difference. Does coasting make a big difference? Yeah, somewhat. But if you add coasting to being easy with the throttle, to turning off the air conditioning, then all of those make a difference. In a race car, we are always thinking about what's coming up next. Am I meeting my fuel mileage numbers? What's going to happen under the next yellow? What do I need to tell my crew chief to change in the car when we pull into pit lane? Should I pass this guy? Shouldn't I pass this guy? Does it make sense? What are the risks involved? All of this personally is what goes through my mind, and I think goes through any top-tier race car driver. They're thinking ahead. They're thinking about what could take place. If you do that on the street, you become less reactive. And when you're less reactive, you are smoother with the pedals. Instead of on and off the gas and on and off the brake, you're smoother with all of those things. People don't like doing that because they think they're going slower in terms of time. Slower in speed is not slower in time on a city street.
Some of the things that surprised me today was the techniques that they show you, slowing down that gradually as you go into the light, and the effects of it. And the proof was in the pudding because it showed you, the mileage that you're saving.
I was heavy, they said, on the pedal, but then at the end of the day, I saved gas. I did 20 miles to a tank, 20 miles to a gallon of gas. I was getting 13 miles to a gallon, and then I came in, I was getting 20 miles to a gallon at the last time. I mean, if I saved a little bit just here, if everybody tried it, I think we could save money, yeah.
Back in 2008, first time gas prices got up to the $4 range.
Switch out of that. That's actually the principle from eco driving, but we need to move on. So I will. Mr. Martinez said something in his presentation after lunch about we're not there yet. And Metropool's approach really is what can we do today? Our history is being on the street. Basically, we call it hand-to-hand combat, dealing with commuters. How do I get from here to there? How do I find a carpool and all that? So we're really where the rubber meets the road, and kind of that's how we attract this problem. So we go at, this is an idea, eco-driving. So we actually, put it in with the help of the folks from Yonkers. This is a survey that was done, only 12 people, remember. It was 1 to 7, the 8's up there for, I don't know. But we asked them what the quality of the presentation was, instruction in the classroom, clarity of, there were very few training materials. It was mostly experiential. Effectiveness and overall design of the program. You can see that they thought it was terrific. Was it what they expected? 4 out of 12 said it was, and 8 out of 12 said it exceeded. How many times do you hear anything exceeds? I mean, that's a pretty incredible statement. Would you recommend it? 100%, definitely. That's an extra piece because one of the drivers did say that he thought it could be improved if we had more materials for them to take home to remember some of it. So it's 100%, really. So this is what the training was. It was a half a day. They came in and they went right out and drove with the trainers. And during that, they just talked about the weather and just drove, and we were recording everything, we were measuring everything. Then we came in and did a lecture period. You saw a little bit of it there. They went out and drove again with the instructor, giving them some instructions. And then they came in, there was another small part of the lecture, and then they went a third time, continued to get a little more instruction, but a lot less actually the third time, and we were measuring it each time. The average improvement for the 12, over 20%. It actually probably would have been higher. We had 2 ringers. We had someone who was driving a smart car who kind of already, I drive a Prius for the last 13 years. You immediately start driving different when you drive a car like that, so some of these techniques don't help quite as much, although I went from about 45 to 47 after sitting in the back seat. I didn't even drive in the thing. But one guy, I think it was the guy actually that said he went from 20 miles to 13. Really? Okay. And then the smart driver. I won't go through this. It's not data, but it's about the cost of gas. The top part is 2014. We had information from the city of Yonkers that they spent $2 million in fuel, and we're not using 20%, which is what the guys came out of the training with, because they were doing it that day. It drops off, and so we use 7%, and you can see the cost savings for the city. But the gas mileage, that's one thing. Gas is going to fluctuate, but the environmental impact and the safety don't change just because the cost of gas. I just want to kind of bring that back. The gallons of gas used stays the same, and the environmental impact, therefore, and the safety is built into the overall equation. This is kind of where we're at with it. If we do it behind the wheel, these drivers come in, they fly in, we got to put them up. I mean, there's a cost, $300 a person, but if we did it webinar with promotion, whatever, it's probably $30. What we're trying to structure is a combination of that, where we want to train some trainers or champions with the drivers and create the buzz that those guys coming around creates, but also do webinars, combination of the two. Critical is always, in our business, is always the buy-in. We had buy-in at the mayor's office, that helps. Promotion is really critical with anything in transportation demand management. Education, getting the information out is critical, and reminders. In a program like this, people do drop off. So if you're expecting those savings in the out years, you're probably not going to get them unless you have a rigorous ongoing promotion and reminders. We haven't had an easy time selling it. We've kind of walked right into the gas prices doing this, and municipal budgets, which are often already spoken for, and we're spending less on gas anyways, so we don't need it. So, we do not have the data. There isn't much feedback that's really concrete. Everybody goes, well, yeah, what's going to happen 3 years from now? We can't count on it. So there's a lot to be done on that. The multiple strategies is some of the things that have come up already today. We're working this from many different angles. I mean, if we go to more efficient vehicles, the dollar savings may be less. So we almost compete with each other, but I think that is the approach to the problem, to attack it from all angles. And then that's it.
Any questions for John or our other speakers? Anyone?
Needed data.
You talked about what you've done. What do you plan to do?
Was that for me?
All three of you.
Well, we're going to continue to try to promote this. We think there are dollar savings, and that's the selling part of this. Always comes down to what's in it for me and how much savings. Everybody likes to talk about their environmental impact at cocktail parties, but decision making is always about the dollars and cents.
Question.
The Drive Smart Bay Area campaign will run through the end of 2017, so we've got a while to go with that one.
Our Drive Smart is wrapping up soon, this initial demonstration, and we're proud that even though it's a small scale project, that we have sort of a lot of what happens in the public sector is figuring out how to jump through all of the hoops you need to jump through to do things that are different. So I'm happy that I've jumped through all those hoops for what's going to come next, and we're looking actively for ways to expand our reach with this kind of programming, and I'll be following things like Drive Smart Bay Area and how they're integrating more programming in and trying to leverage our other TDM programming to expand the program. I think that you must have taken our name. I mean, we had it first. I don't know.
That's why I'm in the middle.
Thank you. I have a question for John.
John, I have a question for you.
Oh.
You have data out there. I saw data.
I don't think.
That a little bit of data.
Yeah.
There was a successful program, right? Did surveys, and this one guy said, "Oh, my fuel economy went up quite a bit, right?" He went from 13 to 20 miles. Yeah.
Correct.
Now, here's the problem with human behavior, right? We're really good on that first day. We're like, yeah, we're going to do better. On the second day, we're going to do 3/4 as good. And we go, big job. We're humans. We're creatures of habit. So what is there to reinforce the message to the fleet drivers? Is there any data, like a year later, was there any change in behavior without some kind of reinforcement?
equipment or a tool, onboard tool?
With the program, we didn't, it was actually,
Repeat the question, please. We
Oh,
couldn't hear anything.
sorry.
all right. She mentioned that it'll drop off over time, and is there anything to keep the performance up, or what is done, and has it been checked a year down to see what the performance is? We did not continue. Was there more?
No, that was
Okay.
good. It's
Okay.
about behavior. How do you
Yeah.
reinforce good behavior?
Well, there's a couple of things. We self-funded it, so we did not run it for a year. We did that program to basically see if it would fly and then try to sell it from there. So we don't have. But when we designed the program with the city, it was a 3-year idea to go through and continually be back on campus, on site, use webinars to continually to reinforce it. And there was an incentive part of it where people that did a really good job would be, recognized and rewarded. So we use a lot of the things we do in normal TDM, incentives and champions and recognizing that stuff. And our projections, I don't know if you noticed, but those guys hit over 20% as a group. But we didn't. The projections we use are 7%. So we were saying it's definitely going to drop off. So the projections, I don't know if they're conservative or not, but they're certainly a lot less.
I mean, I would just briefly add to that. I really enjoyed hearing about that program because we have sort of the inverse issue of you have these apps and you have long interactions that are not as high intensity. It's on the individual to get excited about it, interact with it, get the device in their car, pay attention to it. So obviously finding a mix of free or low price feedback apps or devices and things like that and being able to pair it with a really sort of big bang beginning seems like a great combo. I wish we had the resources to do that in the way we had scheduled our budget. I think it would have made a big difference with initial interest in the program.
I have a question for John specifically. Are you willing to take the next step or considering taking the next step in trying to get fire, police, and ambulances to embrace smart driving? Because they seem to be the worst offenders when it comes to it, in terms of idling, using gas when it's not necessary, disregarding emergencies, of course. But how do you respond to that?
Well, it would be better for us if gas prices were higher. And the private sector, if you look at fleets and things like that, they do this stuff. They train their own, drivers and whatnot, because it really means, the city of Yonkers, if at gas a little more expensive, it's $150,000 savings. That's a pretty good deal on $2 million. But so it's happening out there. What we need, we probably need a little bit. We need to do a real pilot project to get it out there, because it does work, and we need to, it would be nice to marry it with better data and all of that stuff and the analysis. So because we had a hard time selling it because we don't have that. We have this little pilot, and they go, that's great, and they believe, that these people improved, but we haven't got the traction. And I think that's a great place for government to be involved. We're a nonprofit, and we do this kind of related things all the time.
All right, we're getting the poll because I know we have to get to other sessions. So thank you very much, everyone.